Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Talking Throttle with me, Alex. As always, if you're returning back, welcome again. If you're new, welcome. I had no race this weekend. We've got a Baku next week, but this week I thought this topic was going to be quite fun because I'm born in 2001, right? And a lot of the controversies that I've got for my top 10 happened before I was born. So a lot of these things I've had to do research on. Not only do research, but I couldn't believe what I read. I couldn't believe what I get. The drama, the chaos. Some things are still in court today. People cheating to get championship wins and all sorts. I'm like, we need to spill the tea. So stay with me, bear with me. Let's go through the top 10 controversies and myths in F1 history. Let's get into it. Don't know what this is, but let's do it.
That's suspicious. That's weird.
Let's go straight into it with number one. I'm not beating around the bush. I need to deliver this tea. If you already know these things, then fair enough. But to me, this was all new, okay? So let's get into it. So number one, is the year is 1994. And we're going to call number one Schumacher's 1994. For those of you who know what I'm talking about, let's just embrace my reaction to it. And for those who don't, strap your seatbelt in. 1994, at this point, Michael Schumacher was leading the championship by 1 point, and I think Damon Hill was in second place, right? Fine. Schumacher must have hit the wall, and as I said, the championship had 1 point in it at this point. So with him hitting the wall, that then allowed Damon Hill to go ahead, and Schumacher then collides with Damon Hill for both of the cars to then retire, and I think Michael ended up going on to win that championship. Led fans to believe, hold on a minute now. Hold on. Did you just crash into him deliberately to win the championship? Question mark, right? We have my number two, and my number one and my number two are intertwined. So the year is now 1997. So 3 years later, we find ourselves in a very similar situation. Again, instead, it's with Schumacher versus Villeneuve. And I know I'm saying his name wrong, and I know that's not the right way to pronounce it. And I know who this geezer is because he was on Sky Sports and he was on the pit the other day. I had to check how to pronounce the name. It's Villeneuve, so we're going to say Villeneuve. So Michael's ahead in first place. Villeneuve is in second place. Villeneuve tried to overtake Schumacher. Schumacher didn't like it, so Schumacher's drove into him, causing him himself to retire from the race. Villeneuve went on to then not only win the race, but went on to win the championship. I didn't mention the first time round, which I'm going to mention now, is how the FIA reacted to it. So the FIA, the first time round in 94, they just deemed it as an incident, and that was pretty much it. It is what it is. Second time round, the FIA said, nah. We've seen what you did. We're seeing what you're trying to do. You're clearly trying to crash into him to make either both of you retire or make him retire to then in some way for you to keep your championship lead or for you to go on to win it. So do you know what the FIA says? Literally gobsmacked moment. So the FIA's turned to Schumacher and said, we know what you did, so you know what? You see you in the championship. Done. You ain't in the running. I don't want to hear it anymore. You championship done. So basically they disqualified him from the championship, which allegedly is the harshest punishment that the FIA has ever given. I was not aware that that's how he used to play and roll the dice. I didn't know Schumacher was like that. Number three and number four, I'm trying to figure out the best way to tell you this because the tea is teaing. This one, I'm not going to tell you the name of the scandal because it's that deep. It already has its own name. This one isn't even a conspiracy either. This one's more of a fact. This actually happened. The year 2008, this is the Singapore Grand Prix. You've got Nigel Piquet Jr., who drives for Renault, RMP for Renault, but just bearing him in mind, I'm going to bring him back up later. At this point, Felipe Massa is leading the championship, and I believe Lewis Hamilton is behind him in second. Go about having the race as normal. Nigel Piquet Jr. and lap 17, he accidentally, for whatever reason, he crashes the car. Fine. That then brings out a yellow flag, as it normally does. As it brings out the yellow flag, Felipe Massa, who's leading the race at this point, he then comes into the pits. And at this point, they used to fuel the cars as they used to come into the pits. So what had happened was, he had come into the pits. He accidentally left the pits way too early when the fuel pipe was still attached to his car. Ferrari crew to have to run down the pits to then chase the car down to then take the thing off for him to then rejoin the race. And that's cost him a lot of time. And in grand scheme of things, like 17 seconds in a normal life, it's fine. 17 seconds in F1 is everything, considering the margins are like what, seconds, if that, right? Because of that, he is no longer leading the race. I think he ended up in like 13th or something like that. Lewis Hamilton finishes in third. Felipe Massa finishes 13th. He gets no points. Lewis must have got 10 points. Let's just say he got 10 points. He ended up losing the championship. Now, here is where it gets tricky. A crash happened. A pit stop went funny. He lost the championship, right? Right. 1 year later, PK Jr., who used to drive for Renault, who ended up crashing the car, he gets dropped by Renault, and he's pissed off. And he's like, "Swear, you wanna drop me? Bet I'm gonna snitch." So he then announces that apparently during the Singapore Grand Prix, he was told by his team manager to deliberately crash the car to bring out a safety car, all because they wanted his teammate Fernando Alonso to win a Grand Prix. So all of that was done just for Alonso to get one singular win, because they were that desperate. They hadn't won anything that season. They had barely broken even. They were like, yeah, okay, we're just going to have to make something work here. And lo and behold, that's what's happened. Now, all these years later, and even at the time, Felipe Massa is now fighting in court to say that if that crash didn't happen, which has been proven to be true, I would have still been in contention for that championship. Now, I get where he's coming from with that, I too, after like reading everything. However, it sounds to me like the pit stop was the issue, whether the crash happened or not. Renault, at the time, the team principal of Renault was a man called Flavio. Now, he's just returned back to F1 and he's back in the pits again. However, after that incident and after that got exposed, he was banned from Formula One. Do you want to cheat? You're done. However, as of 2020, let's say, I think he returned this year actually. So as of 2025, he's back in the F1 paddock again. If you're confident enough to let somebody in who's obviously cheated to try and get a win, go into number 5. So number 5 is a myth that I have spoken about on the podcast before, and it's not the first time I've spoken about it, so I'm just going to talk about it briefly, but I won't go into too much detail because it's in other episodes. But number 5 is the curse of the Red Bull seat, and I cannot stress how many times I have spoken about this, because I don't think it's a curse. I don't think it's a curse. I just think it's a fact due to the way that Red Bull operate. So ever since Sebastian Vettel was dominating with Red Bull all those years ago, his teammate was Mark Webber. So I'm going to now list out the second teammates at Red Bull. You've had Daniel Ricciardo, Mark Webber, Alex Albon, Yuki Tsunoda, Liam Lawson, Sergio Perez, and I think that's all I can think of. I know there's probably Pierre Gasly as well. I think it seems as though only one person can dominate, whereas a teammate is often left like collateral damage. Nobody kind of I've confirmed it recently, at least with Max anyway. I can't speak for Sebastian Vettel, but they've confirmed that they've designed that car around Max Verstappen. That car is for Max. The car's not designed for Yuki to drive, it's designed for Max to drive. And that's because clearly Red Bull operate on a one driver situation. With that being said, that leads me on to number 6. I think that Christian Horner got sacked from Red Bull because of Max Verstappen. And then this is another thing I've spoken about on the podcast before, so I won't talk about it too much because I've got a whole episode on it. Make sure you go and watch. At the time, I'm sure when I recorded the episode, it was happening at that point. So now 10 weeks have gone on. I'm saying this in hindsight. Just before that news came out, it was British Grand Prix, and there was a lot of rumours that Max Verstappen was going to leave Red Bull to go to Mercedes. Now, I always say there's no smoke without fire, and I'm sure I said that in the original episode as well. For those rumours to be circulating so heavily as well, I think it was true. Verstappen, as much as people may like him, people may not like him, again, we've spoken about it before, he's one of the best drivers on the track, if not the best driver on the track, right? So I would imagine if Red Bull heard rumours that he was going to go to another team, they're like, nah, we can't lose the best driver on the grid. 4-time world champion, just won 4 championships, we can't lose him. I think Max basically said to them, if you don't give me a car, or if you don't at least give me some type of, authority to say this is what I want to do and this is how I want it to work, then I'm going to go. And bearing in mind at that point, Max has come back off 4 world championships on the trot. He's come back in this season and he's losing to a fucking McLaren. As much as like McLaren are dominating, but you've just gone from last 3 seasons, you was winning every single race by 20 to like 25 seconds. That's a massive margin to you coming into this season, and now what, you're making 5th and 6th and your car is really slow. If I was Max, I would have those same reservations. You give me a car. If you do not give me a car, then I am gone. Because unless you're able to turn this around, because to me we were going like this, now we're going just like this, and unless you can show me signs that we're going back up again, I'm out. Because you're not sinking me with your ship again. It would make sense for him to make that argument, and I would make the same argument too. So, and even if you think about the situation with Mercedes, their 2 drivers haven't signed yet. There was rumours that Max was going to go over there, now they've disappeared, but the 2 drivers signed their contracts for next year. I think Toto's very much keeping a door open for him. It all depends on the car that Red Bull give Max. But again, we'll have to see, because there's a variety of races coming up, and there's a variety of races that will agree with that car and some that won't agree with that car. So we'll have to see. But that is my number 6, and let's go on to number 7. Next one, we're going back in time again, but this time we're going back to 1989 championships. This one's about Ayrton Senna and Frost, right? So this one, again, I'm gonna try and keep it really brief just because I'm cautious for time, but I want to spill the tea at the same time. So this is how it went down. I think Senna must have tried to overtake Frost or vice versa. Senna then crashed into Frost. Frost then retired from the race, but then I think Senna also got hit or got some type of damage, but he went into the pits and he was able to rejoin the race. And then after the race, the FIA turned to him and say, no, we're disqualifying you for a technical reason. For then fans to think, wait, what are you talking about? Wait, what? He's just rejoined the race and now you're going to disqualify him for some technical reasons? Like, it doesn't make sense. For fans to then believe that the FIA was being biased towards Frost more so than they were towards Senna. And I think we're heading into an era of F1 now where they're making things more of a spectacle. They want to make it more of a show than they're making it about actual racing. This then brings me on to number 8. The other one, again, there's a whole episode on it. If you haven't watched it, make sure you do. But this one is about the Hamilton and Verstappen 2021 season, or more say the Abu Dhabi race in 2021. If you haven't watched the episode, make sure you do, but I'll quickly recap it. Essentially, they were really close in the championship all season round. It came down to the last race, and I believe they were either joint on points. There was 1 point or 1 point gap between the two, right? So they end up going out to race. I believe for whatever reason, these are yellow flags. So F1 starts to pit. Lewis is in first place. We are in the final laps. I think Toto said in the interview they didn't pit because I think if he pitted, he would have gone in, but he wouldn't have maintained his position in first place. So he would have just bottled it. So he couldn't pit, essentially, because if he with so many laps left in the race, it was more of a risk than it was reward. There's a rule about cars unlapping themselves. So if you then come out of the pit, I think whoever's in that position is in that position. Long story short, the geese that was inside the FIA guy said, okay, all those 3 cars that are in front of Max, yeah, just go to the back, just move out the way. This is more about Lewis and Max, which is incredibly unfair. He's right behind him. You're basically giving Max a free pass to say, here's a championship. If you don't take it, then I don't know what else to tell you. And that is another example of how the FIA can twiddle, rules a little bit to their benefit. So they need to be careful doing that, because F1's not a show. Like, I know I'm a fan of the sport, but I'm a fan of it because I enjoy the racing, not because of the stars and the spectacles. Like, I want to see action. Don't ruin that for us. It's ridiculous, you know what I mean? But if you haven't already, make sure you do like, comment and subscribe onto this. Make sure you let me know whether you've heard these things before, whether this is new to you, whether you was just as shocked as I am, or whether you've just been reminded of something from the old days. Just let me know. Make sure you tune in next week, because next week is Baku. Next week is the Azerbaijan Grand Prix street circuit. Very much looking forward to it. So I will see you next week Tuesday for that episode. And if anything, I will see you all again soon. Bye.